British grocery retail is a battlefield. Every week, supermarkets slash prices, launch promotions, and fight for customers with an aggression that's destroyed dozens of once dominant chains. This isn't polite competition, this is total war, where the biggest players will do absolutely anything to crush rivals and dominate market share. We're talking about price wars that drove profit margins to zero, expansion battles that left towns oversupplied with supermarkets, and takeover fights that ended with brands being eliminated entirely. 9 grocery chains that entered Britain's retail war thinking they could compete, only to be destroyed by rivals who had more money, better locations, and absolutely no mercy. These failures weren't gradual declines, they were casualties of deliberate strategies to eliminate competition through pricing, expansion, and acquisition that left no room for weaker players. Let's expose the brutal tactics that killed them.
Coming in number 9, Farmfoods. Farmfoods operated as a frozen food specialist with hundreds of stores across Britain, building successful niche business before being crushed between Iceland's aggressive pricing and supermarkets' frozen food expansion. The business model focused exclusively on frozen products, initially thriving by offering ranges that mainstream supermarkets didn't stock and prices that Iceland couldn't always match in specific categories. The success came from understanding that frozen food market was growing and specialized retailers could serve customers who wanted deeper ranges than supermarkets offered, creating profitable niche that seemed defensible. The retail war impact came when Iceland aggressively expanded and Tesco, Asda and others massively increased frozen ranges, eliminating Farmfoods' differentiation whilst matching or beating their prices through superior buying power. The price wars of late 90s and early 2000s were particularly devastating, with Farmfoods unable to match Iceland's loss-leading pricing on key products, while supermarkets used frozen food as traffic drivers regardless of profitability. Former Farmfoods executives described being squeezed from both sides, with Iceland taking the most price-sensitive customers through aggressive discounting, while supermarkets captured convenience-focused shoppers who preferred one-stop shopping to visiting specialist stores. The survival strategy involved retreating to specific regional markets and accepting much smaller role, essentially admitting defeat in the retail war by abandoning expansion plans and focusing on defending core territories. The stores that remain operate in locations where neither Iceland nor major supermarkets have overwhelming presence, essentially surviving in gaps that bigger players don't consider worth fighting over. Consumer research showed Farmfoods lost relevance as customers could get equivalent or better frozen ranges at Iceland for similar prices or at supermarkets with more convenience, eliminating reasons to make dedicated trips. The lesson from Farmfoods is that niche positioning only works until larger competitors decide your niche is worth invading, with specialist retailers being crushed when category killers and general retailers both expand into their territories with superior resources.
Coming at number 8, Peacock's grocery division. Peacock's operated discount stores with significant grocery sections before strategic overreach and the retail war's intensity forced exit from food retail entirely to focus on clothing, where they had stronger position. The business model combined discount clothing with basic groceries, attempting to serve budget-conscious customers' multiple needs in single convenient location, creating one-stop value shopping destination. The success was limited, with Peacock's never dominating grocery, but building reasonable presence in areas underserved by major supermarkets, particularly smaller towns where their combination offer had some appeal. The retail war impact came when supermarkets expanded clothing ranges, whilst discount grocers Aldi and Lidl entered Britain, offering better food at lower prices in more focused formats, attacking Peacock's from both directions. The realization that attempting both categories meant excelling at neither led to strategic retreat from groceries, with Peacock's deciding that spreading resources across food and clothing left them vulnerable to specialists who did each better. Former Peacock's management described the decision to exit groceries as pragmatic recognition that they couldn't compete with Aldi, Lidl, and supermarket value ranges, with their buying power and operational efficiency making Peacock's grocery operations unviable. The elimination of grocery sections happened gradually through 1990s and early 2000s, with stores being converted to clothing-only format and food operations being wound down as leases allowed. The survival as clothing retailer proved temporary anyway, with Peacock's entering administration multiple times in the 2000s and 2010s before eventually closing most stores, suggesting that even focused strategy couldn't save fundamentally weak business. Consumer research showed customers never really valued Peacock's as a grocery destination, viewing the food sections as convenient additions to clothing shops rather than primary reasons to visit, making them easy to abandon. The lesson from Peacock's is that combining unrelated categories works only if you excel at both, with attempting everything creating vulnerability to specialists who do single things supremely well.
Coming at number 7, Londis as independent brand.
Londis operated as symbol group for independent convenience stores, providing branding and buying power to small retailers before being crushed by supermarket convenience formats and ultimately losing independence through acquisition. The business model was cooperative buying group, allowing independent retailers to compete with chains through shared branding, combined purchasing and marketing support, whilst maintaining store ownership. The success came during a period when convenience stores were fragmented, with independent shops competing individually against chains, with Londis providing scale benefits that helped members survive and profit. The retail war impact came when Tesco Express, Sainsbury's Local, and other supermarket convenience formats invaded high streets with superior ranges, better prices, and corporate backing that symbol groups couldn't match. The price differential between Londis stores and supermarket convenience formats became untenable, with customers quickly abandoning local Londis shops when Tesco Express opened nearby, offering better value, longer hours, and wider selection. Former Londis retailers describe being unable to compete on pricing regardless of buying group support, with supermarkets' massive scale advantages allowing them to undercut independent operators whilst offering superior customer experience. The loss of independence came through acquisition by Booker Wholesale in 2015, with Londis being absorbed into a larger group that also controlled competing symbols, Premier and Budgens, essentially ending its existence as distinct entity. The conversion of Londis stores to other formats or closure has been gradual but relentless, with the brand becoming increasingly irrelevant as supermarket convenience stores and discounters dominate local retail. Consumer behavior research shows that customers abandoned local convenience stores rapidly when supermarket alternatives appeared, with loyalty being based on lack of alternatives rather than genuine attachment to Londis brand. The lesson from Londis is that cooperative buying groups cannot compete with vertically integrated chains, with independent retailers being systematically eliminated by corporate competitors who control everything from supply chain to store operations.
Coming at number 6, Alldays. Alldays operated 700 convenience stores across Britain in the 1990s, building substantial presence through acquisition and expansion before being destroyed by supermarket convenience formats and ultimately absorbed by Cooperative Group. The business model was corporate-owned convenience stores, offering extended hours and local convenience, positioned between traditional corner shops and supermarkets in an emerging sector. The rise was rapid through aggressive acquisition of independent stores and small chains during the 90s, with Alldays becoming one of Britain's largest convenience operators with ambitions to dominate the sector. The retail war impact was devastating when Tesco, Sainsbury's and Morrisons launched convenience formats with better buying power, superior ranges and ability to sustain losses that Alldays couldn't match. The strategic error was expanding too quickly without building sustainable competitive advantage, with Alldays accumulating properties through acquisition but never developing operational excellence or brand loyalty that would defend against better resourced competitors. Former Alldays executives describe watching helplessly as supermarket convenience formats opened near their stores and immediately captured 50% or more of their business through superior offering and trusted brands. The acquisition by Cooperative Group in 2002 for £138 million seemed like salvation, but actually marked the beginning of end, with new owners rapidly rebranding stores to Co-op format and eliminating Alldays brand entirely. The speed of elimination showed how little brand equity Alldays had built despite substantial store network, with Co-op calculating that their own brand was more valuable than preserving the name that customers had no particular attachment to. Consumer research confirmed that Alldays was convenient but unmemorable, with customers shopping there due to location rather than any positive brand attributes, making the name disposable once Co-op owned the properties. The lesson from Alldays is that rapid expansion creates network but not brand value, with stores being assets only if they generate customer loyalty that survives when better competitors emerge.
Coming in at number 5, Superdrug grocery operations. Superdrug operated health and beauty stores with grocery sections attempting to compete with Boots and supermarkets simultaneously, before being forced to abandon food retail entirely by competition that was too strong on both fronts. The business model combined beauty products with convenience groceries, attempting to create one-stop destination for health, beauty and basic food shopping in high street locations. The limited success came in specific urban locations where customers valued convenience of buying beauty products and snacks together, with Superdrug never dominating groceries but building reasonable business in specific store formats. The retail war impact came from Boots expanding ranges whilst improving pricing and supermarkets adding beauty sections that eliminated Superdrug's differentiation in both directions simultaneously. The realization that focusing resources on health and beauty where they had stronger position made more strategic sense than spreading across categories they couldn't dominate led to eliminating grocery sections entirely. Former Superdrug management described the decision as pragmatic, recognizing that competing with Boots in beauty and Tesco in groceries simultaneously was spreading resources too thin without creating defensible advantage in either. The elimination of food sections happened gradually in 2000s, with new stores being built without grocery space and existing stores being refitted to eliminate or minimize food ranges during refurbishments. The improved financial performance after exiting groceries validated the decision, with Superdrug becoming more profitable by focusing on categories where they could compete effectively rather than attempting everything. Consumer behavior showed customers never valued Superdrug as food destination, viewing grocery sections as convenient additions rather than primary shopping reasons, making them strategically expendable. The lesson from Superdrug is that strategic focus beats diversification when resources are limited, with businesses being better served excelling at fewer things than spreading across categories where they cannot achieve competitive advantage.
Coming at number 4, Julian Graves. Julian Graves operated health food and whole food stores with 300 locations at peak, serving a niche market for dried fruits, nuts and health products before being destroyed by supermarkets expanding into their categories and online retail offering better value. The business model was specialist retailing, focusing on products mainstream supermarkets didn't stock or stocked poorly, creating profitable niche serving health-conscious customers willing to pay premium for quality and selection. The success built over decades, with Julian Graves becoming recognized destination for whole food products, dried fruits and health items that couldn't be found easily elsewhere in British retail. The retail war impact came when supermarkets massively expanded health food ranges, whilst online retailers offered same products with better selection and lower prices, attacking Julian Graves' business from both directions. The pricing became uncompetitive as online retailers with lower overheads undercut high street stores, while supermarkets' buying power allowed them to offer key products cheaper than specialist stores could buy them wholesale. Former Julian Graves staff describe watching customer traffic decline steadily as alternatives emerged, with store economics becoming unsustainable as sales dropped whilst high street rents remained fixed or increased. The administration in 2013 saw 200 stores closed immediately, with remaining locations being sold to Holland & Barrett, who converted them to their own format, essentially eliminating Julian Graves' brand entirely. The speed of collapse once administration was filed showed how precarious the business had become, with stores that had operated profitably for years becoming instantly unviable once slight decline in sales tipped them into loss-making. Consumer research showed customers abandoned Julian Graves as soon as comparable products became available cheaper elsewhere, with specialty retail loyalty being shallow when price differentials become too large. The lesson from Julian Graves is that specialist retailers survive only while they offer something unavailable elsewhere, with their niche being destroyed when mainstream retailers expand ranges and online competitors offer better value.
Coming in number 3, Morrisons' South England expansion disaster. Morrisons nearly became casualty of retail war through catastrophic expansion in South England in late 1990s, opening stores in unfamiliar market without competitive advantage and almost bankrupting the company before retreat saved it. The business model that worked brilliantly in Yorkshire, combining quality fresh food with competitive pricing and genuine regional identity, translated poorly to South England, where customers didn't know or care about Morrisons' northern heritage. The expansion disaster involved opening stores in locations dominated by established competitors who had better property, stronger brand recognition, and entrenched customer loyalty that newcomer couldn't overcome. The retail war impact was immediate and brutal, with southern stores hemorrhaging money as customers stayed loyal to Tesco's, Sainsbury's and Asda, who responded to Morrisons' entry with aggressive price promotions that made the new stores unviable. The strategic errors included underestimating southern market differences, choosing poor locations because prime sites were already controlled by competitors, and failing to offer anything compelling that would make customers switch from established retailers. Former Morrison executives described the expansion as a near-death experience, with losses mounting so quickly that continued expansion would have bankrupted the entire company, including profitable northern operations. The retreat involved closing or selling southern stores at massive losses, essentially admitting complete failure and abandoning markets that had seemed attractive but proved impossible to penetrate. The salvation came through refocusing on northern strongholds and eventually acquiring Safeway, which provided national presence without having to build it store by store in hostile territories. The recovery demonstrated that even near-fatal strategic errors can be survived if management recognizes mistakes quickly and acts decisively rather than throwing good money after bad. Consumer research in South England showed Morrison failed to differentiate from established competitors, with customers seeing no reason to try new store when they were satisfied with existing options. The lesson from Morrison is that expanding into markets dominated by entrenched competitors requires compelling differentiation or superior execution, with Me Too offerings being destroyed by defensive price wars from established players. Coming at number 2, Makro. Makro operated cash-and-carry warehouses serving both trade customers and consumers, building substantial business before being crushed between pure trade suppliers offering better service and consumer retailers offering better value. The business model was wholesale warehouses with membership requirements, selling in bulk quantities at wholesale prices to businesses and consumers willing to buy large packs. The success came from serving small businesses that needed wholesale access without massive minimum orders, whilst also attracting consumers who wanted bulk buying to save money on household purchases. The retail war impact came when supermarkets launched their own wholesale operations, whilst pure wholesalers improved service to trade customers, eliminating Makro's differentiation in serving both segments. The consumer business was destroyed by supermarkets offering similar bulk packs at comparable or better prices with more convenient locations and no membership fees, making Makro's value proposition disappear. The trade business suffered as dedicated wholesalers offered better service, credit terms and delivery that Makro couldn't match, whilst also serving consumers who demanded different things from the operation. Former Makro employees described confusion about whether to prioritize trade or consumer business, with attempting both meaning excelling at neither and losing customers in both segments to specialists. The exit from Britain came through sale of stores to other retailers in early 2000s, with Makro essentially abandoning British market after decades of operation because business model had become unviable. The properties were valuable, with stores being converted to various formats, but Makro brand had no equity, with neither trade nor consumer customers having loyalty that would support premium for preserving the name. Consumer research showed Makro users were price-motivated rather than brand-loyal, abandoning the warehouses immediately when supermarkets offered comparable deals with better convenience. The lesson from Makro is that serving multiple segments with conflicting needs creates vulnerability to specialists who focus on doing one thing supremely well, with generalist approaches being destroyed when specialists attack from both directions. Coming in at number 1, Wimlow. Taking the top spot is Wimlow, the Scottish supermarket chain that was destroyed despite being successful and profitable, killed by Tesco's determination to eliminate a competitor and dominate Scottish market. The business model was quality regional supermarkets serving Scottish communities with genuine local focus, building customer loyalty unusual in grocery retail through understanding local preferences and long-term community relationships. The success was substantial, with Wimlow operating profitably across Scotland, employing thousands and being genuinely valued by customers who saw it as Scottish alternative to English chains. The retail war targeting came when Tesco identified Wimlow as obstacle to dominating Scottish market, with acquisition in 1994 being a defensive move to prevent rival from buying valuable competitor and to eliminate competition. The destruction was systematic and deliberate, with Tesco converting Wimlow stores to their own format despite customer protests, eliminating brand that had strong regional equity because national branding served Tesco's interests better. Former Wimlow staff described the takeover as corporate destruction of valuable business, with stores that had been profitable and loved being transformed into generic Tesco outlets that customers resented. The customer reaction was hostile, with many Scots viewing elimination of Wimlow as English chain destroying Scottish business, creating lasting resentment toward Tesco that persists decades later. The strategic calculation for Tesco was ruthlessly logical, with eliminating Wimlow being worth customer resentment because long-term market dominance justified short-term hostility and converting stores prevented rivals from acquiring valuable properties. The lesson from Wimlow is that being successful and profitable doesn't protect against acquisition and elimination, with larger competitors willing to destroy valuable brands if it serves their strategic interests, regardless of customer preferences or community impact. The broader pattern of retail war is that collateral damage includes not just failing businesses, but successful ones targeted for elimination, with competition being about domination rather than serving customers better. Consumer loyalty proved meaningless once ownership changed, with customers having no power to prevent elimination regardless of their attachment to brand or anger at its destruction.
War tactic number 2, strategic site acquisition. The retail war's most effective weapon was buying or leasing best properties to deny them to competitors, with supermarkets accumulating sites they didn't need just to prevent rivals from opening nearby stores. The land banking involved buying potential supermarket sites years before development, ensuring competitors couldn't establish presence in attractive markets whilst giving dominant chains time to build when suitable. The defensive property strategy meant small towns ended up with multiple stores from single chain, but none from competitors, with Tesco particularly aggressive in accumulating sites to block rival expansion. The competition authorities eventually restricted this practice, but only after decades of strategic site acquisition had locked in competitive advantages for chains that moved first and fastest. The lesson is that retail success depends on property as much as operations, with chains controlling best locations having essentially won before operational competition even begins.
War tactic number 1, below cost selling on key items. The most brutal retail war tactic was selling essential products below cost to drive traffic and destroy competitors who couldn't sustain similar losses, with major chains accepting losses on milk, bread and other staples to dominate markets. The predatory pricing was enabled by scale, with chains that made billions annually being able to sustain losses in specific categories indefinitely, while smaller competitors were forced to match or lose customers. The regulatory oversight was insufficient, with below cost selling being difficult to prove and authorities being reluctant to intervene in pricing, allowing dominant chains to use financial resources as weapons. The impact on suppliers was severe, with farmers and processors being squeezed to enable below-cost retail pricing, creating unsustainable economics throughout supply chain. The lesson is that retail war isn't about operational excellence, but financial endurance, with winners being those who can sustain losses longest, whilst eliminating competitors who cannot match their resources.
So there you have it, 9 grocery chains that couldn't survive Britain's retail war, from Farmfoods crushed by Iceland and supermarkets, to Peacock's abandoning groceries, from Londis losing independence to Alldays being absorbed, from Superdrug exiting food to Julian Graves destroyed by online and supermarkets, from Morrison's near death through expansion to Macro being squeezed by specialists, to Wamlo deliberately eliminated despite being successful. The common threads are larger competitors using financial resources to destroy smaller rivals, below-cost selling on key products, forcing competitors to match unsustainable pricing, strategic property acquisition denying growth opportunities, and deliberate elimination of competitors through acquisition regardless of brand value. These weren't business failures in traditional sense, but casualties of deliberate war, where bigger players used superior resources to destroy competition, with competition being about domination rather than serving customers better. The survivors were those with sufficient scale to match the largest players' tactics, with businesses lacking billions in resources being systematically eliminated regardless of operational quality or customer loyalty. The retail war fundamentally changed British grocery landscape from diverse market with multiple regional and specialist players to concentrated oligopoly dominated by 4 massive chains controlling 75% of market. Every casualty represented thousands of lost jobs, communities losing local alternatives, and customers losing choice as dominant chains use their power to destroy rather than compete. The lesson is that British retail war was about power, not excellence, with winners being those willing to use financial resources most aggressively to destroy competitors rather than those serving customers best. If you remember these chains, you witnessed transformation of British retail from competitive market to concentrated oligopoly through deliberate strategies to eliminate competition. Thanks for watching, and remember that in retail wars, casualties aren't just businesses, but communities losing alternatives and customers losing choice as dominant chains use their power to destroy rather than compete.